So let's talk about day trading. You see it all over social media, right? People making a fortune from their laptops on a beach somewhere. For a lot of people, it's the ultimate dream of financial freedom. But for others, it's just a casino with a different paint job. So what's the real story? Is this a legit career, or are you just playing a very sophisticated game of roulette?
I mean, you've got to admit, the dream is powerful. The idea that you can be your own boss, call your own shots, and make a living from literally anywhere in the world, all you need is a laptop and Wi-Fi. It's this picture-perfect vision of modern success, and honestly, it feels more real and more attainable than it ever has before. And a huge part of why it feels so close, so reachable, is because of the explosion of these companies called proprietary trading firms, or what everyone just calls prop firms. They make you a pretty incredible offer. You prove to us that you know how to trade, and we'll hand you a massive account to play with. But how exactly do you prove it?
Well, it all kicks off with something called a challenge. Here's how it works. You pay a fee. It could be a few $100, sometimes over 1,000. And in return, you get to trade in a totally fake, simulated market. If you can hit their specific profit goals without breaking their strict risk rules, you pass. You get funded. It sounds fair, right? A true test of skill. The first rung on the ladder to the big leagues.
But whenever there's a game that involves big money and even bigger dreams, there's always another side to the story. A much colder, more statistical reality that starts to sound a lot less like Wall Street and a lot more like Las Vegas. So that brings us to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? Of all the people who pay that entry fee and try to pass this so-called audition, how many actually succeed? What are the real odds of making it through to become a funded trader? And there it is. According to data straight from a prop firm called FunderPro, it's less than 15%. Let that sink in. For every 100 people who pay the fee and take on the challenge, about 85 of them fail. They don't make it. And here's the real kicker. Buried right there in their own terms and conditions, it says, flat out, that the trading is not real, but simulated. The funds are purely fictional. So think about what that means. The 85% of people who fail, they're not losing money in a real market. They're losing a video game that they paid a very real fee to play. So why? Why do people keep paying and playing when the odds are so stacked against them? Well, it turns out the entire system is built on a very powerful psychological principle. In fact, it's the exact same mechanism that keeps a gambler pulling the lever on a slot machine over and over again. Psychologists call this a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. That's a super technical sounding term for a really simple idea. You get a reward, but you have no idea when it's coming. It could be on the next trade, or the 10th trade, or the 100th. It's the not knowing, the unpredictability that is so incredibly compelling and addictive. And when you actually put day trading and slot machines side by side, the similarity is just undeniable. Unpredictable rewards? Yep, both have them. Do people keep doing it even when they're losing? For sure. Is it really, really hard to just walk away? You bet. One is in a glitzy casino. The other is on a screen in your home office. But psychologically, they are running on the exact same engine. So this system doesn't just get you hooked on the what-if of winning. It also perfectly exploits the weird little glitches in our own brains, our cognitive biases. And one of the biggest, most powerful glitches has to do with how we handle losing. It's a concept called loss aversion. The research on this is fascinating, and it basically shows that the emotional pain of losing a certain amount of money is about twice as powerful as the pleasure you feel from gaining that same exact amount. Our brains are literally hardwired to hate losing more than they love winning. Just think about it in simple terms. You find a $100 bill on the street. That feels pretty good, right? A nice little win. Now imagine you lose a $100 bill that was in your pocket. That feels devastating, absolutely terrible. The emotional scales are just not balanced, and that imbalance pushes us to make some really bad choices. And when that awful, devastating feeling of a loss kicks in, what happens next? Well, for a lot of traders, it triggers something called revenge trading. This is when you're so desperate to make that pain go away that you just throw your entire strategy in the trash. You start making wild, impulsive trades, trying to win it all back right now. It's a decision driven by pure emotion, and you can probably guess how it usually ends. And revenge trading is just the beginning. There are so many of these mental traps. You've got the gambler's fallacy, where you convince yourself a stock is due for a win just because it's been losing. Or the opposite, the hot hand fallacy, where one win makes you feel like you're invincible and can't possibly lose the next one. Your brain starts feeding you stories that have nothing to do with reality, and at that point, your biggest enemy isn't the market, it's your own mind.
So we've covered the psychology, but this rabbit hole goes even deeper. We can actually go down to the level of pure biology, of brain chemistry. What is physically happening inside your head when you're caught in this loop of winning and losing?
And honestly, this is where it gets kind of scary. That same psychological trick, the variable ratio schedule, the slot machine engine, it doesn't just mess with your behavior. Neuroscientists have found that it lights up the reward centers of your brain in a way that is strikingly similar to highly addictive drugs. We're talking cocaine and heroin levels of brain activation.
And this kicks off a really dangerous loop. Here's how it works. That unpredictable win gives you a huge rush of a chemical called dopamine. Your brain loves that feeling, and it immediately starts craving more. That craving drives you to keep trading, hunting for the next hit. And over time, this can actually weaken your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that's supposed to be in charge of good judgment and self-control. It literally impairs your ability to make rational decisions.
So, when you put all of these pieces together, the bad odds, the psychological hooks, the biological impact, what's the final result out in the real world? Well, looking at the wider retail market, the numbers tell the same story. Data from one major broker shows that nearly 80% of regular people lose money trading these complex financial products. 80%! It's a massive, staggering number that really shows you what you're up against.
So we have to go back to our original question. Once you understand the real odds, the mental games, and the way it affects your brain, what are we really looking at here? Is day trading a true path to wealth for the incredibly disciplined few? Or, for almost everyone else, is it just gambling dressed up in a business suit? That's the real question.